stories.
About 2 years ago, today, I recently moved to a new city in Canada. I was 21 at the time and single, as I just got out of a shitty relationship, so moving was a fresh start for me. In a new city, where nobody knew really, except my one guy friend, who we will call Mike. Mike didn't live directly in the city though, but we hung out a lot. Since I was single in a new city, I downloaded Tinder. Everyone my age has this dating app, or hookup app really. I don't usually do dating apps, but I was bored and was looking for a little fun. Remember the I don't do dating apps thing once you reach the end of this story. This is the exact reason I don't ever go on them anymore. So, I get on there and I match with a guy, who we will call Andrew. So I didn't message him first or anything, because I was doing a lot of swiping, and honestly went on with my day doing other things, as I just moved and needed to unpack. So a couple of hours later I check my phone, and I see Andrew has messaged me several times saying hi, complimenting me, and he even sent a funny pickup line. I always appreciate a good pickup line, as I have a good sense of humor about mostly everything, and don't take many things that seriously. Keep this in mind too. So I replied, and we got to chatting. He eventually asked for my number, so I gave it to him. It was fine from there, really. Nothing weird was said. So he asked me out to dinner and a few drinks. I agreed, and we met 3 days later. We met in a public place, obviously. I saw him outside the restaurant leaning on his car. It was a really nice car. He asked me to take a photo of it with the sun setting in the background. I said okay, sure. Thought it was random, but whatever. We go inside and eat dinner and drink a little bit, and it was a really good date. So I invited him back to my apartment to keep the night going, I guess you could say. It wasn't super late, and we were really hitting it off. We get to my door, and I was a little bit tipsy as I drank 3 glasses of wine. I wasn't drunk though, but I kept forgetting my code to my door. So I had it on my phone, and I got us in. The rest of the night wasn't weird at all. I woke up beside him the next morning, majorly hungover, and we obviously had fun the night before. He left, and all was good. I really didn't want to pursue anything further, so I texted him and said, "Last night was great, but I'm not looking for anything serious right now." And he freaked out on me, saying I was wrong for leading him on, and whatever else was said. Okay, fine, fair. You can have your opinions. That's by all means fine. So I ghosted him. Just didn't really feel like talking anymore after that. As he said degrading and subjective things, I left it at that and moved on with my life, as we all would. About a week goes by, and I'm out running errands to finish the last details of getting my apartment furnished. I come home, and he's sitting in my living room with flowers and a bottle of wine. I was drinking at dinner. I was immediately like, "How did you get in here?" As you need a key fob, and obviously a door code. The door code thing, after I thought about it, did not surprise me. He remembered it, as I had it in and out in my open phone. But the key fob I was confused about, how he got the extra one I have. He admitted to taking it when I was asleep, when he stayed the night. I was really mad someone would do that after not knowing someone for like 16 hours in person, so I kicked him out, and I was a little shooken up about the situation. I blocked his number immediately after he kept apologizing. I just couldn't forgive him after doing that and invading my home, which is a safe space. Fast forward again to 2 weeks later. I was on a little getaway in Seattle with my friend Mike. I posted Instagram stories on the trip, and I forgot until after he followed me. We matched on Tinder. This is a common thing guys my age do on Tinder. So he knew I was gone for a weekend. Mike and I are coming back to my place to drop bags off and chill for a little bit at the apartment. I walk into my apartment with Mike this time, and Andrew was on my couch with a girl. I was completely in shock he got in again. The girl even had the audacity to say, "Who are you and why are you in Andrew's apartment?" I lost my mind on both of them and asked him how in the fuck he got in again. He had no made-up story this time. He just flat out didn't know what to say except, "I didn't know when you'd be back, so I've been staying here with this bitch." Mike was mad as fuck about the situation as I told him all about it weeks ago. I demanded to know how he got into my apartment again. He said he made multiple copies of the key fob after he took it. My heart completely sank and I threatened to call the cops if they did not get out of my apartment, and gave me every fob he copied. I was pissed and felt so invaded of my space. About a month goes by, and I was still thinking about it every once in a while. He was blocked on every social media I could find him on. I thought he was gone until I randomly saw him places, more and more frequently, like it wasn't a one-time thing. I saw him at least 7 times, and I was in public every single time. The last time, however, I was walking the seawall alone, and it was getting kinda late and dark out. It was about 9 p.m. in the beginning of June, and I stopped to tie my shoe, and when I stood up, he was right there. I fucking panicked because I genuinely felt threatened by him at this point. He kept asking why I ghosted him and didn't accept him coming around anymore, and how I could be so mean to someone who he was so into. He kept trying to grab my arm to talk to me and started yelling. I was in tears because his next moves I had no idea about. Someone thankfully heard and intervened. I told them I was not okay, and they called the cops. He obviously ran, and the police asked me to identify him. I gave them his name, and they couldn't find anyone with that name. So now it felt like me wondering if that was even his name. I remembered I had a picture of his license plate in my phone. He had a nice car and wanted me to take a picture of it with my phone as the sun was setting behind him. Douchey, I know. So I gave them that information, and they told me the plates weren't even registered. So now I'm mind blown by the whole thing and very confused, even a little worried. They couldn't do a whole lot with what I provided, but they said they would update me if they find anything, and to contact them if he gets into my apartment again or if I saw him out. I never did, thankfully, but to this day I'm always looking over my shoulder for that stalker. I have since then moved and haven't seen him again, so to the guy who broke into my apartment on more than one occasion, let's not meet again. I don't know if many of you remember this, but in 2016, there was a creepy clown trend where people dressed as creepy killer clowns and would hang out in places after dark or stalk people. My story takes place on my college campus during fall of that year. I lived with my grandparents before leaving for school, and I am extremely close to them. Also, I am very shy and had 0 friends or people I regularly hung out with at school. I wanted to reach out and meet new folks, so I signed up for a salsa dancing club that I met on Friday nights. I told my grandma over the phone, and she was happy I was putting myself out there. She asked if I was going with anybody. No, I told her. I'm just going to go by myself. Are you sure? She asked. Don't any of your roommates want to go? The idea of talking to my roommates terrified me. I could handle structured gatherings, but personal conversations left more room for awkwardness to creep in. No, they're not here. I don't want you walking around campus by yourself at night. I thought my grandma was just being overly protective. Grandma, it's fine. The streets are well lit. And it's only a 10-minute walk. It's perfectly fine. Well, if you're not going with anyone, call me and let me talk to you on the phone as you walk back. I agreed. That evening was incredibly fun, learning the basic steps and dancing to upbeat Latin tunes. At around 10:30, I felt ready to head back to my dorm. So I snuck out of the building and headed towards my dorm. Although the paved path I was walking on was lit by street lights, it seemed darker than usual. In addition, the entire campus was deserted. Normally there were quite a few kids my age wandering around, but that night there was not a soul to be seen. I dialed my grandma and made small talk with her as I walked. I took my heels off and carried them in my free hand. Now the path I was walking on went through a stretch of sidewalk that was perpendicular to the one I was taking. Under one of the streetlights about 10 meters away, I noticed a lone figure standing with its back towards me. The figure, hearing me chat on the phone, slowly turns towards me. He was tall and heavy-set, with wide red hair, and appeared to be wearing light blue pajamas. His face was obscured by a killer clown mask. The mask was stark white with dark black eye sockets and a twisted, malicious grin. Time seemed to suddenly slow way down. The clown did not move towards me. He simply stood there, staring. I knew I had to think fast. I contemplated my options. I could A, scream like a little girl and run, B, approach him and confront him, or C, pretend he did not scare me. The entire moment I just described couldn't have lasted more than a second, but in that moment, it felt like an eternity. "Are you there?" I heard my grandma say, remembering to breathe with the phone still in my ear. I decided to go with plan C. I broke eye contact with the clown. So anyway, I said loudly enough that the clown would hear me. "Yeah, I'm on my way," I continued. "Lopsided squid, what's going on? Is everything okay?" I heard my grandmother ask, her voice suddenly filled with anxiety. As confidently as I could, I walked past the sidewalk where the clown was standing, continuing to chat. His head slowly turned as I walked past, watching me until I was out of sight. I ducked into the archway of the nearest building and tried the door, praying it was unlocked. It was. Once I was inside, I slumped against one of the concrete walls and broke down in tears. What a pussy. I explained to my grandma what had just happened. My grandma yelled for my grandpa to dial the campus police on his cell phone so that I could stay on the line with her. I got up and started pacing up and down the empty halls, checking every door and window to see if the psycho clown had followed me. Was he just a stupid kid doing this on a dare? Or was he someone with more evil intentions? Some of the creepy clowns in the news had axes or baseball bats. I had no idea if mine was armed. When my grandpa tried to explain to the officer on the phone what had happened and that I needed help, he told my grandpa, "Your granddaughter needs to make the call herself." Apparently the reason I had to talk to them was so that they could be sure the call wasn't just a prank or some stupid reason like that. The point is that they wouldn't take my grandparents' word that I was in distress. I would have to hang up with my grandma and dial the campus police myself. Now, not knowing if I would survive the night, I told my grandma, between sobs, "I love you. I love you too." My grandma was also crying. I dialed the campus police and told them who I was and what had happened. The officer on the phone sent several other officers to find me while I stayed on the phone with him and gave him a description of the clown. As I was talking, I heard a door open. I froze. Was the clown here? Did he find a way in? A tidal wave of relief washed over me as several officers came striding down the corridor. They walked with me back to my dorm. As soon as I was inside, I locked my door and window, and I shut the blinds. I called my grandma back to tell her I was safe. After talking for a little while longer, we said goodnight. Since then, I have made a few friends at school. While I'm in a better place now, I don't go out alone after dark anymore. And as for the creepy clown, let's not meet again. Some may remember the Great Clown Incident of 2016, where people would dress up like clowns and go around with balloons and signs, sometimes even weapons, to spook people. Though these sightings were mostly reported in America and Canada, the UK also had their fair share of encounters. I personally had 3. It was October, surprisingly enough, and school was in session when the first one showed up. I was in math class when it happened and heard about it during lunch when my friend very casually mentioned it in passing conversation. "Did you hear about the clown sightings?" "Oh yeah, it's crazy, right?" "I know, yeah. Did you see the one that showed up in the car park?" What? Apparently a few students had witnessed not one, but 2 clowns in full costume wielding balloons on school property. The first skulked into the school's car park and stood in the middle of it, looking up into the windows and waving at the children, looking back down at him, while his friend watched by the gate. This didn't last more than 5 minutes, as the receptionist came running out yelling to them that she should call the police. The first clown very calmly turned and walked back to his friend, and they both piled into the back of a black car, waving goodbye to the receptionist as they drove away. The second encounter was also one that I didn't witness but heard about. Friend and I were leaving school together on a Wednesday and saw the place was swarming with police officers. They were parked all the way up the road, escorting children across the streets and even stationed outside local shops. I asked about it, and I got bits and pieces of information. All the people had shared similar stories. A clown had created a Facebook account. Their profile picture was a generic creepy clown, and their name was citation needed, the clown. The user posted a profile picture of our school with the caption, "Wednesday, 1:40 p.m. Our school saw it and freaked the fuck out. The faculty called the police and they were stationed outside of our school for another week after the incident, though nothing really came of it except a report later that night of a clown sighting at one of the local shops. Finally, the last encounter was one I saw with my own 2 eyes. I was in the car with my dad. He was driving me home from band practice, and as it was October, it was already pretty dark out. We pulled around the corner into our street when my dad suddenly slammed on the brakes. A fucking clown was stood in the middle of the road, right at the turning. If my dad hadn't been so quick on the brakes, we would have surely rammed into him. My dad blew the horn and rolled down his window to yell at the dude, who didn't move a muscle. The clown just looked at him. It wasn't holding anything, just standing there. My dad and I share a lot of things, including having a wild temper. But what we don't have in common is how we handle our anger. He's a confrontational person, while I just let it bubble inside until I get to my room and let loose on any poor piece of furniture that may be too close. My dad gets out of the car and starts angrily walking towards the clown, who must now see just exactly how pissed off he is. My dad is taller than the clown and a lot larger, with tattoos on every inch of his body and a biker beard. The clown must have seen this hulking, tatted guy charging towards him, yelling profanities, and chose to live as he kinda jogged backwards in his massive shoes onto the pavement, then pointed to the car with one hand, out his other hand, out to stop my dad, and made a ladies first gesture. My dad, though confrontational, knows a win when he sees one. He climbs back into the car, still seething with anger, and peels away. By the way, as this was going on, I was sat in the passenger seat in silent terror. One night in November of 2017, when I was 22 years old, my mom and I went grocery shopping. While standing in the bakery section, my mom and I ran into my aunt, and the three of us stood there and chit-chatted for a while. I had been feeling generally uneasy around this time because I had recently been watching a lot of YouTube videos about true crime and creepy encounters. I was having trouble sleeping and had been getting scared when I was home alone and heard the tiniest noises. Due to this uneasiness or paranoia, I guess, I was very alert and on edge at the bakery at my grocery store. I stood there with my back to the bagels and kept an eye on everyone walking around past us as my mom and aunt shared stories. Nobody seemed suspicious until I caught the eye of a prematurely balding man. He looked like your average mid-30s brony neckbeard nice guy. I remember thinking to myself, God, he's kinda creepy looking, isn't he? As he walked through the produce section into the bakery. But then I started to feel bad. Chill out, you're being way too judgmental, I told myself, going so far as to even smile at him out of sheer guilt. He's probably staring at you because you're staring at him. He's just glancing on his way by. He's going to forget about you the second he takes his eyes off of you, right? Wrong. I completely forgot about this experience for a few blissfully ignorant months. Then in January, I received a messenger request from an old friend I'd like to touch with. My long-lost friend was the first of many to reach out, saying that there was a lot of buzz on Facebook about a local sex offender who had been taking pictures of young women with hair he deemed pretty, some in their 20s, like me, some well below the age of 18, and posting them on a picture-sharing site. I don't know exactly how, but his online albums stocked with, and I am not exaggerating, thousands of these pictures had been found, and a bunch of screenshots were being plastered all over Facebook to raise awareness. My old friend saw a few pictures of me standing against the bagels, flanked by my mother and my aunt, my long hair hanging down, and my post-French braid waves. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the screenshots. I told my family about what I just found out, and my brother immediately called the police to report it. As he was talking to an officer, I received more screenshots, this time of the creep's sex offender registry page. It was the man from the grocery store, the man I was initially unnerved by, the man I felt guilty about, the man I smiled at. When my brother got off the phone with the police, he told us that they had been flooded with reports all night. While sympathetic, the policeman my brother spoke to said there was nothing they could do, as the creep was legally within his rights to take those pictures of us out in public. The man was allegedly assaulted outside of a convenience store the night his pictures were discovered. Before he even realized it, he had been exposed, and he has since been arrested for possession of child pornography and an unrelated case. My brother had actually been aware of this guy long before, as he was apparently infamous on the net for being a sketchy white dude who was obsessed with Asian women, had a hair fetish, and oh yeah, was a convicted sex offender. So as they say, creepy photographer, let's not meet again. I am 22 and this incident happened a year and a half ago. I had just moved into my first apartment and was in the process of moving in. The door that led into my apartment locks itself automatically when closed. So, I was going to the entrance of the apartment complex to get my mail. While talking on the phone with my boyfriend, I returned to my apartment and sat down on the bed while opening the mail while using the phone. I dropped my phone on the floor and it landed under the bed, so I had to lie on the floor and stretch for it. I saw something that caught my eye. There was someone under my bed. My eyes widened, and I choked the urge to scream. The person under my bed was lying still with his back towards me and his head to his chest, so I couldn't see his face. And he didn't see me. Trying to be rational while so many thoughts rushed through my head, I picked up the phone and said, "Sorry, I dropped my phone. I'm just gonna take a shower and call you back." The bathroom is right by my bed, so I hastily walked in, quietly locked the door, turned the shower on, and jumped out the window. My apartment is on the first floor, and I called the police. They told me to wait nearby. They said to go across the street and see if anyone comes out the door to the apartment complex. This was during summer, and it was still light out. I placed myself across the street, hiding behind a car while watching my open bathroom window and my front door. I called my boyfriend, and he came to me just before the police. I gave them my keys, and they went inside. Only moments later, two cops come out holding a thin, tired-looking man. His eyes looked crazy, but he didn't try to get away. The policeman that stood beside me and comforted me while the police searched through my house. I was a mess, shivering and crying. Told me that the man stood outside my bathroom door with one of my kitchen knives waiting for me to come out. This man had somehow crept in my entry door while I was getting my mail and hid under the bed. The man that was trying to hurt me turned out to be a homeless person and was placed in a mental hospital. My boyfriend moved in with me the very next day. So this was in the summer of 2016. I was 15 when all of the weird clown shit was happening to me. My little sister and my mother went on a road trip to see my grandparents. Now at this point, we were on our way back home and we were in Georgia. We stopped at a gas station around 6 a.m. It was still very dim outside. My sister and I were dead asleep until I heard my mom leave the car. My sister was still asleep. Okay, really quick, let me set the scene up. Me and my sister were laying in the back seat. Her head was on the opposite side of the car, and we were directly next to each other on the seat, so I could see perfectly out her side of the car window. That's kind of important. Anyways, so I wake up, and I'm really groggy. But suddenly my attention is jerked to its maximum capacity when I heard a horrifying, pitchy laugh that didn't even sound real. In that moment, I thought I was in some weird lucid dream state until I snapped back to reality. I sat up at a 90-degree angle and looked out of the windshield and there was this man with a red balloon dressed up very similarly to the original Pennywise, but dirtier and cheaper. I watched in actual fucking disbelief as he went from person to person, laughing in people's face. He went up to a little girl, probably like 6 years old, and her mother, pinched her cheek, got up in her face, and said something along the lines of, "Hey, princess, wanna be my friend?" And the mom hit him and screamed at him to get the fuck away. He then started laughing like a maniac again. Then he skipped over to my mom's car, saw me inside, literally shaking under my blanket, pressed his face up against the glass really hard, and started pointing and laughing at me. I pulled the blankets up above my head, but I could still hear him laughing his ass off. I swear, I heard him try to jiggle the door handle a few times as well. The only thing that sent him away was the same mother of that little girl yelling at him and threatening to call the police. I heard him leave, so when I sat back up, I saw him skipping away, and he was still fucking laughing. It almost sounded like gagging at this point. I mean, the dude was losing his mind. Later that day, I mean honestly like 45 minutes after he left, we came across an active missing persons search in a forest by the road, not too far away from the gas station. I have no idea if he was involved, but I remember riding by and feeling like it could have easily been me or my sister. I was 15 then, now I'm 19. I mean, I'm a 19-year-old dude, and I love horror movies and gore, scary stories, ghost hauntings, blah blah blah, but the details of this weird-ass experience have never left my mind. Although I was really upset at the time, I'm glad I have an interesting story to tell, but it's really scary to think about what could have happened if the car doors weren't locked or something. Makes me nauseous. So yeah, insane laughing clown man who basically made out with my mom's car window. Let's not meet again. I was 15 and my brother was 13 at the time we moved into our new home. We had woods behind our home separated from our yard by just a 4-foot tall fence. Me and my brother went into the woods to adventure, but we never went far enough to where we could not see our home anymore. My stepfather who lived with us told me and my brother an old man complained about us leaving trash in the woods. We have never brought trash into the woods, nor did he probably own any of the woods. One day we went into the woods, the furthest we have ever been, adventuring as usual. When we no longer saw our home, we looked into the deep woods and saw a shadow behind a tree. The noise we heard next haunts both of our dreams. We heard a loud laugh of a clown that sounded like it came straight from the movie It. We ran faster than we ever had before, jumped our own short fence, and told our mother what had happened. She did not believe us, but to this day, when I get home in the dead of night, and the only light is from the porch and barely illuminates the fence, I swear I feel the sense of being watched as I unlock the door and enter my home. Mysterious clown figure, let's not meet again. Last year I would pick up my sister from school since she didn't have a car and I wasn't going to college. She was 17, I was 19. Now my sister was your typical neckbeard bait. She's fairly attractive, long blonde hair, green eyes, and a great personality. She's a joy to be around and seems to like everyone and everything. She's watched quite a bit of anime and reads a lot of manga. Her friend group was normal, filled with people who fit her interest and personality. I've talked to quite a few of her friends, one of them being my own. They are all chill, really good people, which makes it so weird that the neckbeard was a part of it. Neckbeard wasn't the stereotypical neckbeard in terms of look. He was actually very attractive. He was lean, never smelled like BO, and wasn't greasy. He did, however, have a bit of a neckbeard growing, so by looks, you wouldn't expect it. He liked anime and all of that, but his personality was just god-awful. He was constantly putting others down, subtly, but it was still there. He was a major creep. It was freaky scary how good he was at manipulation, and making it seem like he wasn't degrading his and Elle's friends, as well as Elle, even if he was. Once I met him, I disliked him. I have a lot of experience with people like him, so I knew pretty quickly what type of guy he was. I voiced these concerns to Elle, but she brushed them off, believing there was good in everyone. The first time I met him was when I went to pick up my sister from an after-school club. I forget which one, but Neckbeard was in it too. She asked me to give him a ride home as well, so I decided that, since he was her boyfriend, it wouldn't be that bad. Oh ho ho, how wrong I was. Right off the bat, he'd noticed my shirt.
Is that a Green Day shirt? I love them.
Oh really? They were one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, I'd totally love to have a night with the singer, you know, alone. Come to think of it, you kinda look like him. What's your name?
Me, starting to become very uncomfortable. I'm Gerald.
I just love that name. It rolls off of the tongue nicely.
I started to get very uncomfortable now. Elle didn't seem to notice, so I didn't mention it, not wanting to ruin her day. Normally, saying I looked like Billy Joe Armstrong would be an ordinary compliment I'd receive. I'd had the same hair as him and somewhat the same fashion sense, but the comment before the comparison rubbed me wrong, and the part about my name even more so. I stopped the conversation there, and we didn't say anything else to each other until I dropped him off.
Thanks for the ride. Maybe I'll see you later.
He gave me this awkward wink before walking away, and Elle moved to the front seat. I don't fucking like him. He's nice. Once you get to know him, really, Elle replied. She seemed set on that, so I didn't push the topic more. Over the next few months, I'd seen a lot more of Neckbeard. Enough to see that he was not the kind of guy I wanted around Elle, or anyone, really. He was perverted and degrading, and I absolutely despised him. But the encounter I'd like to talk about is what happened on Elle's birthday. She invited all of her friends, including Neckbeard. I'd gotten a hold of some alcohol through my friends where I live. It's illegal to drink underage with consent from parents, and I baked a cake. The whole house was decorated, and everything seemed to be going great. I stayed away from the group, letting Nell have her fun around with her friends, and drank by myself on the couch, making sure that nothing got too bad. I talked to one of mine and Elle's mutual friends. F hung out with me towards the middle, when I started to get drunk enough to act a bit out of character, but not enough to not remember what would happen. Dude, look. F motioned behind me. I looked where he suggested, only to see Neckbeard staring at me from where he sat with Elle and her friends. I looked away. You're all he talks about now, you know. He's got one hell of a crush on you. Oh, really? I've only had like 2 conversations with him. Yeah, it's crazy. It makes Elle hella weirded out. As if he could hear us talking about him, Neckbeard sat next to me on the couch, close enough to have our thighs touching. Hi guys. F. I think L is going to start a game of Uno. She wants you to join. F decided to join L, giving me a sympathetic look as he left me with Neckbeard. Good God, once we were alone, it started. His hands never left me. They were always on a part of me, whether it was my clothes or actual body parts. I never liked being touched much, so it creeped me out and put me on edge. At this point, though, I was too drunk to be able to do anything about it. Hey, Gerald, you seem to be close with F. Huh? Oh yeah, he's a good friend. His tone, from what I remember, was slightly off, as if he was angry at me. How have you been? You look good. It's been a while since I've seen your pretty face. I shifted away from him then. I remember not wanting to be anywhere near him as he said that. What made it worse was his hand was on my arm. I wanted to vomit. Thanks. Could you please not touch me?
Why? Are you gay?
That was a head spinner at the time. I wasn't out to a lot of people then. Only L, F, and some of my other friends. I asked how he knew that, and he said he saw L texting me about it once. I sighed. Aren't you dating L?
Yeah.
It's recent, and it's not like I'm not allowed to experiment. His hands moved to my thigh, and I attempted to shift away. But I drank a lot by that point, that I wasn't anywhere near strong enough to move his 6-foot body with my 5'6" one. He moved to press into me more and grabbed my chin, forcing me to kiss him as I tried to wiggle away. It didn't work. He shifted to move on top of me, his knees pushed against my crotch. Just let it happen. I promise it'll feel fine. I started to have a panic attack as memories of past years came back from his actions, and I started to sob. I all but screamed at him to get off, called L's name, and started to thrash around. He seemed to get scared by my actions and jumped off. I don't remember what happened after that, as I was in the middle of a panic attack, but I was told he left, and L and F helped me up the stairs to my room. I've always had trouble dating, as all of my relationships end in utter defeat. As bad as they are, though, I'm someone who can't stay single for the life of me. It's a real problem. My first relationship started just after high school. It was one of the tamest breakups, too. The girl's name was Tiffany, and we had met each other outside of school, and eventually got together. Nothing too bad went on in that relationship, except for the constant running around she did. She was oblivious to what she was doing and what a relationship meant. She'd make fun of me for getting jealous like I wasn't supposed to feel that way for her spending more time with anyone else. I decided to break it off after a few months of this. I couldn't take it anymore. She would constantly rush off and be with other guys and tell me I'm being controlling when I'd tell her it made me feel like she didn't like me anymore. Once that relationship ended, I did not date until I was out of high school. I finished up sad and lonely. So, after high school, were a few girls I went through. The first one was after I got kicked out of my parents' house for being 18. I had a girl move in with me to my first apartment and help with bills. We ended up sleeping together and eventually dating. It came on quick and felt natural. Her name was Mary, and she was a very sarcastic person. I lived with her for a long time, and got really close to her. She'd constantly pick on me for being sensitive to her jokes. She'd make a joke like she's got other guys lined up ready to take her away and tell other people that I'm small. It was really uncomfortable. She finally said this in front of everyone I know and everyone she knows, and I got tired of it. I blew up on her at home, and she acted like I was doing something wrong. She got mad at me for defending myself, and when I told her I was tired of her making fun of me and spreading lies about me, she called me a pussy and said I was being too sensitive. I'm sorry if I can't take one insult after another. She moved out of my apartment, and I fell into a depression after that. The place started piling up with trash and clothes everywhere. I stopped really taking care of myself and things got bad. I talked to a friend for therapy and somehow got over myself and got back to near normal. He even helped come over and clean my nasty place. I started getting desperate a little bit later and heard about a dating app called Tinder. Tinder felt like a golden opportunity to get some real date with no strings attached. Maybe it would have been if I knew what to look for. I was stupid and would take anyone. I got on the app and found a girl I liked. She was cool, and she wanted to meet up with me after talking for a few days. So for all I knew, she could have been a crazy person, but I didn't care or so much as think about it. I made plans with her to meet up at a local bar. She was absolutely late and made me wait around the bar for an hour before she showed up. I didn't mind that at the time, but she did this all the time. I dated this one, which I forgot her name, for about 6 months. She was cute and great to be around, but I couldn't handle her either being late all the time and the problems that caused, or just standing me up altogether because something else was more important than plans we had. She could have at least told me that she was standing me up all the time, but instead, I'd sit there long enough to know she wasn't just going to be late, she wouldn't be coming at all. I had enough of that and got back on Tinder. I decided to give it back to her and not even tell her that I was breaking up with her. She'd find out when I didn't talk to her anymore. I believe that was fitting, given the situation. The next Tinder date messaged me and asked me out. She was actually everything I was looking for in a girl. She wasn't mean and abusive. She did exactly what she said she was going to do, and she didn't have plans to ruin me. She had her own place. She was renting for another year before her agreement was up. We'd seen each other for a year before we started having problems, and it was because she started getting distant. I found out why. She'd told me, one of my friends through Facebook, that she only loved me for what I was going to have later on. I was completely broken when I saw this. Basically, her plan was that she was going to get with me, and when my parents died and I got my inheritance, she'd be rich. I don't know how she found out I even had that coming, which I don't want that time to ever come, but what she didn't know was it wasn't going to be much of anything. My parents were humble in what they had and didn't have super high paying jobs, hence why they kicked me out at 18. I had all the time that I was a lazy 16-year-old who didn't have a job to help support. This isn't what this story is, though. So, I showed her the messages I had from her and told her that if she was looking to get rich off of me, she would be sadly mistaken. She disappeared shortly after that and stopped talking to me. She blocked me on social media, and that was that. I still see her around from time to time, and she gives me dirty looks, like I did something wrong. The next girl I dated from Tinder was someone who decided her only personality was whatever anime she had watched the day before. I thought it was cool that she watched anime as well, but even 3 weeks of this got really tiring. She'd always pick the most annoying character to imitate. As if that wasn't enough, she made me really uncomfortable because she would act a third her age and make some really fucked up jokes about it. Needless to say, she didn't work out at all. The last and final girl I dated pushed her way in. Tinder really fucked up this one matching us up. So, as soon as I messaged her a few weeks after meeting her, she was in distress, and what she made it seem like she told me that her ex had kicked her out and she needed to get off the streets. Red flag number 1, she should have been that when I picked her up. She came out of a house with bags packed after hearing yelling inside. I didn't put 2 and 2 together and figured this out. The stress of helping someone out got to me and clouded my judgment. I didn't even think to say anything. When she put her kid in the car, I drove her back to my house, and she made herself right at home. In the coming months, she never got a job. Her kid was allowed to do whatever he wanted and destroyed the house, and the bills started piling up. She just sat on her ass and ate. I asked her many times to get a job, and she refused, saying she couldn't. I asked her one day to leave, and she would not. At some point, I wasn't with her anymore, but for some reason she wouldn't believe that I didn't want to be with her anymore. I tried to keep the peace, but she'd always make up something from thin air to bitch at me about. No wonder her ex was kicking her out when I met her. I had to borrow money from a friend to get her out because I was told I had to evict her. After she was finally gone, I was more broken than I'd ever been. My parents were oddly supportive, as they had really never been before now. They told me if I wanted to come back and live with them, I could. I decided not to. I wasn't going to put myself in the position of potentially getting kicked out again. I have been alone ever since. I brought a dude in to help me pay the bills and get ahead, but we have a rule that as long as we are living here, we won't be bringing girls home. Tinder is now off the table for me forever. I'll deal with the crazies around my area that I find in real life, not the ones that I find on a website that are potentially more crazy. If I didn't know better, I'd say I found a psycho on Tinder. My first boyfriend I met on Tinder, and he seemed okay at first, but when it all went wrong in the long run, I decided I was going to try my hand at online dating, and I wish I did not. I messaged a few guys I thought would be cool to be with, but a lot of them just came back with one night stand requests and other favors they probably wouldn't return. Alan was a guy I met after all those, though, and he messaged me with real words, not just, "Hey, baby," or some shit like that. When I messaged him back, he introduced himself in a joking kind of way. He seemed so nice. I liked the jokey mood he was always in, and I got really into him. I talked to this guy for nearly a year before I brought it up. I'd been wanting to meet him in real life. There's just something about meeting someone in real life that you know only behind a screen that is just fun and exciting. We said we'd meet up at the mall and get food there, so that's what we did. I got there expecting to see a really tall guy and ended up seeing a really short guy with a mohawk. The mohawk didn't put me off, though. It just made his joking image. It wasn't a tall one either. He had to go to work, so we met each other like we were already best friends for a long time and got Chinese food to eat in the food court. We then walked around the mall and he bought me several things. I didn't ask him to, he just did. After that little encounter, he took me for a ride in his car. and we went to a barcade close by the mall. We played a few arcade games there and had a few drinks. When it got dark, he dropped me off at my house, and that was the first date. I had fun, and I was all into it. The thought we were going to have an amazing relationship in the future, it was all I could think about. So later on, through the winter months of the same year, we went on a date with his friends, girlfriends. We all got a little smashed and ended up at a Waffle House at 3 a.m. The Waffle House employees were a little put off by the stupidity that had walked through the door, but they served us anyway. After we were loud and obnoxious inside, we went outside. He had brought his car while drinking. I was told that there would be a designated driver, but there wasn't. Whoever would have been bailed on us. At some point, and I don't remember how it happened, his friends and I were playing around in the parking lot, and he was in the driver's seat with the engine running. I was sitting on the hood of his car, talking to another girl in the group, and he put the car in reverse and backed up fast, making me fall on my face on the ground. As I was trying to get up, he put the car in drive and started bumping me with the car lightly. I thought it was funny the first time, even though it panicked me a little bit. He kept doing it though. He might have been bumping me lightly, but it was hard enough so that my drunk self couldn't stand back up, and I kept yelling at him to stop. At some point, I moved to the right, and he ran over my foot, and I heard a snap. My foot was broken, and I started blacking out. When I didn't get up again for him to bump me, that's when he panicked himself and got out of the car. The next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital and they were wheeling me in. I was in so much pain, I mumbled for them to fix me, and I woke up later in the car with a cast on. I don't know how long I was out or what happened, but I told him this wouldn't be happening again. He said he understood, and we parted ways for good. He told me that he gets really stupid while he's drinking, almost to psycho level, and he wouldn't be giving that up anytime soon. I had him drop me off at my house and hobble myself inside and deleted my Tinder. I wouldn't be looking on there anymore for anyone else. I've dated since then, but the go out and party all the time lifestyle isn't for me, because if I'm going to end up hurt all the time like that, I need money that I don't have. Thank God I had insurance at the time, but my foot healed up nicely. At the time of this story, I'm single and clear-minded. If you plan to find a real working relationship with no weird shit attached to it, don't use Tinder or any of the other dating apps on your smartphone. They only lead to people that have that one deal-breaking thing you just can't live with.
If you're new, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me out. And if you are already subscribed, welcome back and thank you for subscribing.